This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and people in their careers. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. This podcast will inspire and educate with great guests. Get ready to learn from other people's successes and failures. Today we have Barnaby Wynter, who is a brand practitioner, speaker, author, and mentor. Hello, Barnaby. How are you?
I'm really well, Mark. Great to be with you today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today. As I said, we're doing this in the morning, which is both a little bit weird for both of us. So listeners, please just give us a bit of a wide berth if we struggle a little bit.
It's also Monday morning.
That doesn't get any worse, does it? Okay, Barnaby, let's go into. I want to go into your education. So you went to Chipping Campden Comprehensive in the Cotswolds. What was that like? So I've been to Chipping Campden and I've been to the Cotswolds a few times, and it's a very idyllic sort of setting. And I'm just wondering, was your childhood idyllic and sort of in the sort of conventional
It was indeed. Although my father worked for Unilever and then for a number of other countries, so actually I had quite an eclectic upbringing. So I was born in Salisbury. In Winchester, lived in Salisbury, and then my parents moved literally every 4 years or so up until we ended up in the Cotswolds. So I've lived in Colchester, I've lived in Chelmsford, and then we moved across into the Cotswolds when I was 10, I think. And I got into Chipping Campden School a year early because I think the pace of life possibly in the Cotswolds was slightly slower than I'd been used to when living in a town. And so I started there when I'm still 10, but I went in when you should have been 11. So I went in a year early. And that actually had quite an impact on my life because I did reasonably well at what was then called O-levels, or what are now called GCSEs. So the exams you take when you're 16. So I did well then and was sort of primed for a good set of what was then A-levels. But I completely flunked my A-levels because I was still only 16 when I took them. And really you should be near 18, so I had to retake them unfortunately, but actually my school life was really good. I also was I was small for my year, and so that affected my sporting prowess, but I really developed my acting skills while I was there. Did a lot of school plays and things like that, and that was the kind of thing you could do at the Country Comprehensive. And also we had a huge catchment area, which was we all came in on coaches every morning, so the whole population came in. So the school had a massive car park, and there would be about 30 full-size coaches with people collected from all the outlying villages that we all lived in. And so I actually grew up in a tiny hamlet, didn't have any shops. It just had a post office and a pub, and that was it. And there was nothing else, and there was one bus a week would come and take you to the nearest town. So yes, you're right, it was probably not what most people are used to growing up with, either now or even in those days.
It's incredible. It's an incredible story of that sort of rural sort of countryside, which now I don't know if it exists in the same way that
I would find it hard to believe. Certainly, I just can't believe it does exist. I mean, notwithstanding the connectivity from the internet and things like that, obviously opened up the world. But no, it was very collective. I mean, I can throw a witch hazel dart, which I cut from the hedgerow over 100 yards. I don't know that's a skill that I'll ever really need until the big power cut, in which case then we'll have to hunt ourselves. But I remember when I eventually got to university, I really wanted to go to a big town, so I went to university in Scotland. And in Freshers Week, everybody said, "Oh, let's go roller skating." I'd never been roller skating, just was ice skating, never been that, So there were loads of things when I did get to university, having resat my A-levels in Cheltenham for a year. And then I got on to university, and of course I was quite behind with what normal townsfolk were used to doing as they were growing up.
So let's just touch on your degree. So you did a psychology degree, or eventually you got a psychology degree.
I don't like
You
what
went a
you
little
put that
bit
much.
science first of all, and then into psychology. Is that right?
No, I did. So I did. My A levels were biology, chemistry, and physics. So I went in and did a BSc. So I did biology, chemistry, and physiology, and psychology in my first year. And then, but my focus was psychology. So I ended up doing an honours degree in psychology. So and that was what I went to university to do.
And I'd loved the description that you put here. You said you have a typical life in a Scottish university. So I didn't go to a Scottish university, so I'm intrigued what that actually means. What is a typical life in a Scottish university?
Well, if you're a what they call a Sassenach, or somebody from south of the border, you're going to be put under immense duress as an English person in Scotland, of course, for most of the time. It usually predominates when England were playing in the football or in the rugby or something like that. So you would, so although the Scots were really friendly, they didn't let you forget your English when there was some sort of battle of the sports going on. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that so I met my now wife of many years at university. So that's fairly typical of a university life, is that when you go there, there's a good chance you meet your spouse. So that was typical of that. But also I actually then started the sporting side. I played in a band. I think we were working this out the other day, over 300 bands, went night clubbing every night. I drank far too much alcohol than I should do, all that sort of thing. So it was a very typical university life. Debated till late in the night, opened your brain up, and did all that sort of thing. So I had a fantastic time. I have three daughters now. Two have just graduated. One as a doctor, one with a first from Birmingham, and my third daughter is in second year. They are not having the kind of experience that I had as a university. So, I think in my day, it was only 4% of young people got to university. Now it's like something like 54%, and every establishment seems to be a university. So it's a very different experience now. So I think when I talk about typical, it's probably what my generation would have deemed as a typical.
Awesome. And to be honest, I don't think it's a typical Scottish university experience. I think it's a typical university experience.
Indeed. It's just with that rub that you're always English in the Scottish university. I think that was the additional dimension.
And then after your degree, you went around Australia on a Honda CX500 motorbike, which I've actually researched, and it's quite a basic motorcycle. It's not like a Harley Davidson, which is particularly comfortable.
No, it's not.
I'd imagine it's quite uncomfortable being on that.
Actually, do you know what? So there's a whole dimensions to that. The only reason I went is because I missed the deadline to apply for a postgraduate course. And I went to the interview and they said, we'd love to have you, but we can't fit you in this year. So you've kind of got a year off. So I ended up going to Australia as a result, which again was unusual in those days. It was, it wasn't something that people did in the early 80s. And what I was looking for was a touring bike. Now, my love are Vespa scooters. So I've had 10 in my life, and I've still got one in the garage right now. So by comparison to a Vespa scooter, I have to say a Honda CX500 was a dream. But what was interesting about it, it was a shaft drive motorcycle, so it didn't have a chain, and it was brilliant for touring. So I bought it. I researched it, and when I say I researched it, I asked a few friends. That's what you did in those days. I said, what would be a good touring bike? They said, well, you should go on a reliable Japanese, and if you can find one with shaft drive, you should do that, because you're spending your whole life fixing your chain if you're touring. They stretch. So
and so you went around. The research I found was 17,000 miles.
That's right. Yeah, I did 17,000 miles in a year. So I flew to Perth. I got a job on a banana plantation, picked bananas for a few weeks. Then I got a job as a kitchen hand in Fremantle. and raised enough money to buy, because I only went out with about £200 for the whole year. So I raised the money to buy the bike. I then bought the bike, and then I rode all the way down to Albany, then across from Norseman to Adelaide, ran out of money, worked again, met some young people, found I wasn't making any money, so left Adelaide after a few weeks, went up to Barossa Valley, picked grapes for 8 weeks or something, and made an absolute fortune. Then carried on, went across through Canberra, Sydney, up to Brisbane, run out of money again, then from Brisbane up to Cooktown, which is north of Cairns, back down, cross Mount Isa, down to Ayers Rock, back up to Darwin, and then from Darwin through Broome and all the way around the west coast, back down to Perth, where I'd started, and sold the bike, came home. So
fantastic. You did all that in a year?
All that in a year, yes.
Sounds an amazing experience. I think that's sort of you said it might be unusual for the time, but I think that's what a lot of people sort of envisage their gap year being, going to Australia and doing all the working and then traveling around. I think it's now turned.
Yeah, and actually, I'd spoken to a few people who've done it before, and they said, be mindful. What tends to happen is Australia's it sucks you in very, very quickly, and I kind of reflects on business as well. But what I met a lot of people in the youth hostels, and I said, "Oh, what are you up to?" And they said, "Well, I'm here for a year." And I said, "What have you done?" We said, "Well, we were on a 3-week jaunt round Australia at the moment, because we went to Sydney and we got a job, and we spent 10 months working in the same place." And then we've kind of left ourselves with 4 weeks to get around the rest of Australia. And I just remember thinking, I must be very careful. I keep moving and I keep moving and I keep going on and I keep going on. And I think my trip therefore has become quite unusual in the sense that I've seen so much of Australia, whereas a lot of people probably have only seen the tourist sites because they've left it too late and just went and became a young person in the place, which can be anywhere in the world then, it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I'm really chuffed. It's the only time I've kept a diary.
Oh, interesting.
Kept a diary, and I presented it to my parents when they came home, warts and all, everything involved that I'd done, and then at the age of 69, my father came. They obviously they were in the Cotswolds, and at the age of 69, my father came for Christmas and announced that my mother and he were going to Australia to retrace my diary, and they emigrated to Australia.
Oh, amazing! What a story! And that was all inspired by
my trip all that time ago,
and did they not read it when you first gave it to
them?
Yeah.
Yeah. They always thought that sounds amazing. We should, So they emigrated with my father, and then at the age of 79, my father came back after 10 years. My mother just said, I can't do without the seasons and twilight and things like that. And having settled in North Queensland, and so they were there 10 years and more or less retraced my diary, which is quite funny.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And then after that, you did your diploma in marketing and advertising, postgraduate diploma. So this is really where the career starts kicking in, and you said you fell in love with advertising and marketing. So
yes.
So tell us about the diplomas and what was the spark that you found in marketing and advertising?
Oh, so that actually goes back to the university days, actually, because I originally went to university to become an educational psychologist and work with children, and then about halfway through my 4-year degree, it dawned on me that I didn't wear cord trousers and Clark shoes and have a long beard, and never was likely to. So I went into the careers office, and I filled out all these 300 questions, and they gave me, again, if you're under 93, you probably won't remember this, but they gave me a concertina computer printout. It was all connected, one big sheet with little holes down the side.
Oh,
and I flicked through it, and it said you could either become a physicist, social worker, or go into advertising. So I looked into this advertising. I thought that's really cool. So hence the reason for going for a postgraduate diploma in advertising. And Watford College at the time was the one of only 2 places. I think the other place was Bristol, and where they ran a postgraduate course, and I started on it, and it dawned on me very quickly how education works. And it tends to go, there were 60 of us on the course, and it was quite clear, education goes as fast as the slowest person. So if you're an enthusiast, you're a passionate, I just felt like I was really being held back in the blocks, which is what I found very frustrating. So then I did a second diploma in marketing alongside it at the same time, but played in the bands and put on a comedy review and did all those sorts of things to keep myself. It was only a 6-month program, and at the end of it, I was deeply concerned about the way education worked more than anything else, because I'd had this free year in Australia, which kind of gave me this whole thing, and then I came back and got stuck in this slightly outdated course at Watford College, and then I was really hungry to get into advertising and start doing the do rather than this learning stuff. So left there and went and got work experience. Or worked for nothing for a top 40 advertising agency in Portman Square primarily on the IB National account. And at the end of that 3-month period, they offered me a job in research, and that was not for me. So I decided I'd become an account man. I wanted to become an account man, so what, a client services person. Rather than working in research. So I didn't stay there, and I started then the career progression from there.
And it's interesting, you've worked for some great companies. So like WPP is a world-renowned company in advertising, and there's a couple of other names in there. So you started in the 80s, late 80s. I was just working for those sorts of companies. I assume advertising has changed a hell of a lot from what it is now with...
There's absolutely no comparison. I mean, I got into the advertising industry at the very tail end of what's known as the Mad Men era. So it was the very tail end. It was still television still dominated. It was all about the big idea. It was very, very creative, huge, high production values. No internet, of course. So although my first agency job, I got to. So again, an interesting thing. So I was working free in this thing, and I budgeted for 3 months, and I got a job at a very small agency just above Dayton's, who had started up, and I was going to go and work there. And while I was in the personnel officer's office, leaving Lonsdale's, as it was then, and getting a reference letter, the phone rang, and somebody who'd been on the same scheme as I'd been on, this, what they called a WEP scheme, a work experience person. I mean, it's a very derogatory, a WEP, you were a WEP. So you're a work experience person. And I was getting my reference, and the phone rang, and it was a previous WEP who was now another agency. And he was ringing and said, "Have you got anyone any good at the moment? Because I'm looking for an account exec." And she said, "I've got someone in front of me." And she handed this phone over to me and said, blah, blah. So I said, "Oh, well, I've got a job." And he said, "Well, look, come over and have a chat." So I went over to Farringdon where he was. And I got on really, really well with him. And actually, my first client portfolio was Fiat Saab Scania trucks, Weber carburetors, and RJ Hall. So it's a young bloke, you know, you're working on automotive and all that sort of thing. Very exciting. Yeah. So my first weekend in proper paper was all about ringing up this company I'd accepted a job with to turn them down to go and work for this other company, which I'd spuriously come across on the Friday and had an interview. So, which I did. So I went to work in this agency in Farringdon on these really big brands with some ex J. Walter Thompson people. They'd split off and started their own agency, and spent 18 months there. But when just as a background story, I'd been there about 6 weeks, and they called me into an office and said, "Right, you're young and trendy." I said yes, and they handed me 4 coloured 3.5-inch floppy disks. Now, for those of you that are listening to this, you need to look up what a floppy disk is, because it's so ancient. And there was a red one, a green one, a blue one, and a yellow one. They handed it to them and said, "Look, on here is a thing called the World Wide Web. We want you to write a report on it." And I just looked at these 4 disks and I went, "Oh, what, on these?" And they said, "You have to put them in that." And they pointed at a computer. And I went, "Okay, well, I don't think I've ever used one of those." They said, "No, but you're young and you'll work it out." So I spent 6 months working out with these disk C : / all these faxes with codes on and all this sort of thing. And I spent 6 months writing this report on what the World Wide Web. And from that point on, I had an absolute fascination for it. So in parallel with my career, I've been working very hard in the online arena as well, which kind of bears relationship where I am now. And I have, for example, in my bookshelf here, one of the world's first yellow pages for all of the websites in the world.
Wow.
Which I bought at the time.
That's amazing.
Can you imagine that? That's, you know, there were 2 editions, and then there were never any other editions. So it's so this is the second one. The first one actually is in another bag. So I've got the first 2 editions of the yellow pages of the internet, and we used to look these things up. So I spent 18 months there, and I then took on my first mentor. And I think it's again, when you're in business, you should always have mentors. And I took my first one on. I've been in business 8 months or so, and I sat down with him and I said, you know, it's all going really well. How do I plan my career? And he said, okay, well, let's have a look at your CV. And he looked through it and he said, wow, you've got a CV to die for if you want to follow automotive as your career, the way of pursuing your career. I said, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. He said, the second largest purchase you'll ever make. You'll always be advertising for cars. Oh, okay, fair enough. That makes sense. Yeah. So what else can you do? And he said, well, the other option you can do is you can become what's known as a generalist. And I said, oh, okay, what does that mean? And he said, well, you work across lots and lots of different types of clients, and you learn how business works and how commerce works, and etc. And then later on in your career, you can be more advisory on how people run businesses and develop them. I said, well, that sounds good as well. Which one should I do? And he said, am I right in saying that you own a Vespa scooter, as I mentioned earlier, and a VW Beetle Cabriolet? I said, yes, I do. I own both of those. He said, he leant over to me and he said, Barnaby, you are not a motorhead. I went, okay, I don't know what that means, but I'm going to take you. He said, you're not going to enjoy being in amongst used car salesmen and Formula One guys and stuff like that for the whole of your career if you have those. You should become. So I decided to pursue a generalist career. And so after 18 months of my first agency, I then facilitated a move to one of the world's largest agencies, Ogilvy and Mather, and primarily to work on Ford, of course, because I had a CV to get me into Ogilvy on Ford. So I got on Ford to relaunch the Ford Sierra and launch the Ford Granada and do various other Ford things. And at Ogilvy, when you were on Ford, you only worked on Ford. You didn't work on anything else. And so after I've been there about 6 months, I've done 7 TV commercials and 49 press ads and 19 radio ads and everything. I was getting quite good. I used to go into my boss's office every morning and say, he was the first to arrive, I was often the second, and we were in this big building on Waterloo Bridge. And I'd say, morning, Tom, can I work on something else? He said, Barnaby, you've signed a contract, you only work on Ford. I said, okay. And I did this every morning for 6 months. To varying degrees of abuse, depending on how busy he was. And one day I got into where we all sat, and he called me into his office and he said, Barnaby, you've worn me down. He said, we had a discussion at the board meeting last night about the fact that you want to work on something else, and we have decided that you can work on the pitch only for a thing called Argos. And at the time, Argos had extricated themselves from BAT Industries and were looking to relaunch their stores and all that sort of thing. I said, oh, okay. So I worked on the pitch, and it all went very well, and I got to know other people and all that sort of thing. And still working on Ford and doing my main job. And then we won, the agency won the pitch, all very exciting, big party, and I went to the party. And then I wasn't bothering Tom anymore, obviously, because he'd done what he promised. So I then got in one day. He said, Wynter, get in here. And it normally meant I was in trouble, I'd done something wrong. He sat down, he said, we have a problem. And I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah, John Mayhead, who's the marketing director of Argos, has insisted everybody who worked on the pitch works on his account. And I went, oh, I was on that overhead slide, wasn't I? And he said, yes, you were. So he said, so we've got to find a way of getting you off Ford and onto Argos and stuff like that. Anyway, that then unlocks the whole. So I ended up, whilst at Ogilvy, I was there 6 years. I launched a thing called Radion washing detergent. I launched obviously Argos. I worked on a thing called Lipton iced tea, which we launched worldwide. I worked on some bird's eye products, so big chunk of Unilever work. Still finished off my Ford work, so I was on Ford about 4 years in the end, and then Argos 3 and Unilever 4, and they all crossed over each other. So after about 6 years, then what actually happened? Interesting, you mentioned WPP, but WPP or Martin Sorrell bought Ogilvy while I was there, and as a result, lots of things happened. But we were moved from Waterloo Bridge to Canary Wharf, which was a huge business district in London that's built nowhere near the middle of London. Now, if you're a young person, you want to work near the middle of London. And it was in phase one. I mean, if you go there now, it's a huge metropolis. It's sort of it's like America in many respects. But in those days, it was phase one square with one big building, and our building in Cabot Square, and it was awful. I mean, for a young person to go there, it was like having your life sucked out of you. So I remember coming back.
Did you ever envisage it would turn out to what it has turned out to?
No, absolutely not. Month of Sundays. No, of course not. No, I thought
it was just some strange square with one.
Yeah, I thought
they have one bank or something.
Yeah. No, there was no banks. There was 3 shops: a pen shop of all things, a chocolate shop, and a thing called O Boticaro, which was like a Brazilian makeup shop. That was all there was in the middle, plus a sandwich bar and nothing else. Now it's a huge shopping centre and all sorts of things. Yeah. No, absolutely. Did I think it was going to turn into a Brave New World zombie land? No, I don't think. I think it's, I don't know if you go there, it's just lots of people wandering around going, "What am I doing here?"
Yeah.
So
I worked the last 2 years in Canary Wharf, barring COVID. So I came from working in Embankment, which is like right in the center of London.
Yeah,
then headed this weird place. The weirdest thing about Canary Wharf I found was that no one walks on top of it on ground level. Everyone walks the level below, because that's where the shops are, the sandwich places and everything. So I said it as a joke more than anything else, but I really struggled not seeing daylight, because I'd leave before the sun came up.
Yes.
I'd be home when the sun has gone down, and then this middle space, I was either in the office or walking to the coffee shop or the cafe to get my lunch. I spent like days without even seeing daylight. It was a very strange experience. But
yeah, so it was like for us as well. I mean, there was just no people there. I think it was 25% occupied. They kept rumoring that American Express were going to come take up a big building. That was going to change everything. But it was just awful. And I found myself getting very, very tired, because what you were the energy in the whole establishment. When there was only a few of you, actually. And I remember coming back from a meeting and walking across Cabot Square, because we were very lucky. We all got parking spaces underneath Canary Wharf because it was part of the deal.
Yeah.
And there was we also had our own boat to go down to Soho, where of course everybody was. The office was always completely empty because everybody wanted to be in Soho, so everybody had excuses to go to Soho and studios and things like that. So it was always a bit of a Mary Celeste anyway. But I remember walking across the square and just stopping, and I was the only person in the square, and it was completely silent. And then I was the only thing. Anyway, it was exhausting. So after a very short period of time, maybe 12 months, 18 months, I moved back into Soho, where it was, was the mecca of advertising at the time, and got a job in a relatively small agency in Frith Street, to launch Boots Opticians, Red Stripe Lager, work on the Woodpecker cider account, and launch various internet products. I actually launched Eurostar, and was part of that team, and various other things, and then got headhunted from there after 3 years to work in another agency in Soho, a startup, to work with one of the best creatives at the time, to really learn how creative work works. Because the thing about big agencies is it's lowest common denominator, because it's big clients, multinational clients. So the ads themselves were pretty tacky. But when you get into the smaller agencies, the ads are really energetic, really dynamic, all that sort of thing. And TV was still dominating even then. So we're into the sort of early to mid 90s, and things were still hanging on in this internet thingy, World Wide Web thing was beginning to sort of get a little foothold, and it wasn't really doing anything at that time. So I built my first website in 1994. I charged £95,000 for a single page website for Eurostar, which just had a flashing red line that joined London to Paris. And if you rolled over London, it showed the 4 departure times of trains from London. And then if you rolled over from then Waterloo, and then and if you rolled over Paris, it's the 4 train times back. That was it. 95 grand. Took me 6 months to build with some web designers, and the agency didn't make any money from the project. Just like the world has changed a bit, I think, since then.
So just thinking about the creativity side of advertising, when you're thinking about a creative from a larger organization, which might be a little bit more of a mandated sort of controlled sort of creativity versus you're saying in the smaller agencies, there can be some real innovation and creativity there. Just talk me through the sort of creative process and how you as an advertiser can harness that creativity within a business environment.
So I think the first thing to say is that the advertising agency that was then is probably structured slightly different. There was really 4 key constructs to it. There's what was called the planning department, the people who did all the research, found out what consumers thought about. There was then the account handling department, which is I represented. And we were responsible for liaising between the clients and what they were looking for, and ultimately another key department in the advertising, which was the creative department, made up of art directors and copywriters. And then there was the 4th department, which is the media department, which is all about media placement and making sure it goes on. And everything was kind of a blend through those. There were other departments who had production and things like that. And then the essence of it would be that my job as a client service person would be to go to the client and find out what their brief was, what they were looking to achieve, what their objective was, what they wanted to generate as a result of the piece of advertising that they wanted to do. That would then formulate into a brief. We would then take that brief into the planning department. We would do some research around what people believed about the product or the service or the need or whatever. And then that would formulate effectively what was called a creative brief. And the key thing for any creative process is getting the brief right. And the more energy and more information and creativity you can put into the brief, then what you end up with is a much better outcome. I would then take that to the creative department, and I would brief guys who would sit around all day coming up with ideas. Right. And they would be stimulated by art and copywriting and videos and all that sort of thing. And they were probably art college trained. They were more often than not from up north rather than down south. So there was always a bit of a rub there. And they would then come up with lots of ideas, and then those ideas would be presented through their department, and the best ideas would be taken by me back to the client. We would show those to the client. The client says, I really like that one, or I don't get that one, or whatever. And we would develop the ideas to a point where the client says, yes, I'm prepared to pay money on you making that idea. And in the big agencies, what you inevitably were held back by is the big clients. Like the Radion commercial, for example, we had to shoot that in 9 languages. So the same commercial, so that it could run across multiple markets, and lots of stories attached to that. So of course, what happens, and that was true for Ford and for American Express and for Woolwich and Guinness, and these are all brands that the big agencies tended to have. And so you had to do multi-regional, multi-variant versions. In fact, I did a meeting with 19 marketing directors from 19 different markets at what was then called Heathrow 2000. I think it was a flash name for somebody when you were in 1994 or something like that, or whenever I presented it, on Lipton Ice. And just to get one script approved took us 12 hours. It was a 30-second script, but we had to get every country variant, and the glasses that they use in Spain are different to the ones they use in Holland, which are different to the ones we use in the UK. So we had to have multiple end pack shots and also all this sort of thing. So actually, what happened is the creativity for that got kind of diminished, diluted down. Whereas when you're into the smaller agencies, what I really loved about that is you could be really challenging, really dynamic, really take an alternative view. And I was much happier in that environment, creating much more disruptive, breakthrough, cut-through advertising. The bigger agencies can't really afford to do it because it's worth multi-millions to get a commercial out through a big agency. With a small agency, you can, the kind of clients they attract are much more daring, much more trying to break through, cut through. And this sort of thing we're seeing more on YouTube now than we are seeing on our televisions, of course. But so the creative process in the smaller agencies is much more energetic, much more dynamic, much more centered on creating amazing pieces of communication. So it punches above its weight. Yeah. Whereas, of course, the big clients have loads of money, so they just blast you with it everywhere in those days.
So two things that have come out of that, which made me think, one is, how do you demonstrate return on investment? And the second thing is, so you were saying like you worked for the smaller agencies and there was immense creativity. Was there awards? Like I imagine there is sort of awards for.
Yeah. And in fact, if I rotate my camera around, you can see some here. Look, I don't know if you can see, there they are. Look,
yeah,
nice awards. Yeah, but there's plenty of awards. And actually, of course, the smaller agencies are more likely to go for them because they were effectively credentials, whereas the big agencies just said, well, if we win awards, that's great. I think awards are always a bit squiffy because often they're awarded by people who spend the most money with the most, media companies, give awards to the agencies that do spend a lot of money with them rather than necessarily the most creative. I've been on a couple of judging panels and I've had some run-ins and say, but that's the better idea. And they go, yeah, but this agency hasn't won anything for a few years and they could do with a jolt. And you go, okay, so this isn't really proper judging, is it?
Yeah.
So yes, awards, certainly. I think, Mark, the biggest award is really a reward, which is your clients sell more stuff.
Yeah.
And my experience has been that if I go to dinner with a marketing director, if my advertising or the marketing I'm doing is working well for them, they pay for dinner. If the marketing is not going so well, I pay for dinner. Right. And that's normally the clue. So my ambition is always to get the client to pay for dinner. And it's a very simple formula. It's good return on investment. If not, it only appears on my waistline.
Right, I just want to go back to your career because there was a turning point in your career where you were managing director at Communications Unit Limited, and you became the business owner of it.
Yes.
So just tell me through the purchase, why you purchased, how you purchased, and sort of how that sort of changed your sort of.
Yeah. So what actually happened is I was headhunted so I came across a thing called the Brand Bucket in '97, which I was working on in an agency. I was running the first telecom advertising, which is an alternative to BT, the first alternative to BT. And I was working with what was called with this agency that kind of did all of the promotions, all of the call center work, everything. And I was the fancy Dan. I was the one with the advertising, the big idea, all that sort of thing. And we used to rock up at their office. And they one day said, would you ever think of joining us? And I said, well, I don't do direct mail or direct mail and email blasts and all that sort of thing. And they said, well, we've watched you. You know how advertising, how ideas happen everywhere. And I went, okay. That's not really me. That we've watched you in our meetings. So so they persuaded me to join them. And when I joined the communications unit, I became the youngest managing director of a top 200 advertising agency. So that in itself was very exciting. So, and I launched a thing called E-Trade, which became the world's largest online broker. And I launched Deutsche Post in UK, and we rebranded Children's Society. So some really big names going there, some great work. And because of this internet background, which is why they've been attracted to me, we had a lot of online stuff. So we had a lot of online stuff, a lot of charity work, a lot of financial stuff, a lot of telecom stuff. And coming out of, so that was in 1999 I joined. Coming out of 2000 into early 2001, actually the market, those of people who are listening, the market just took a downturn big time. And actually the things got hit were finance, telecoms, charity, So actually as an agency, we started to to see business starting to erode and disappear. And the agency was going really well, but we were getting lots of new clients, but the big clients were beginning to erode. And so the founders took me to lunch in April of 2001 and said, we're retiring, because the two owners were in their late 50s. Do you want to buy the agency? And I went, oh, I've only been here, just less than 2 years. I'm not sure I'm ready. And they said, no, we've watched you. You're ready. Now it was in their interest. So we had made quite a lot of money. There was a lot of money in the bank account. I put a bit more in, and the two owners left me with the agency on June the 1st, 2001. We rebranded as Comms Unit. We put the bucket very much at the center of what we were doing. And we relaunched, and we won what's probably one of the proudest pieces of work with the Marie Curie Cancer Care account. And I made this thing, the daffodil, famous.
Right. Yeah.
And so we created that and made that famous and all that sort of thing. So it's all very exciting. And then we got absolutely flummoxed by September the 11th, because where we were seeing a sort of gentle erosion of business, and we'd cut costs, and the two founders leaving made us, our costs were significantly reduced. And as a result of that, and I'd got my run rate down from, I think, 95,000 a month to 47,000 a month. So that's the amount of money I had to raise in order just to open the doors and in October 2001, after September, we invoiced £4,000, and in November we invoiced £17,000. Wow. So any money I had left in the bank was eaten up fairly quickly. Yeah. As you can imagine. So by early 2002, we were in a spot bother, and I brought the team of 25 together and said, guys, I just don't know where this is going. And they said, well, you know what, we don't mind. Do what you need to do. What you're doing with the brand bucket is amazing. And so we embarked on a journey which we planned for 6 months to come up with a formula for marketing success for what then really represented the modern day client that you see now, much less focused on broadcast advertising, which is really dead now. And actually it was all about starting to begin to understand how the internet was having an impact on the way people bought things and how business was developing. So we set about on the 6 month journey, bringing in clients, smaller projects, all that sort of thing. Anyway, that took 7 years, Mark, 7 years to complete that. And by late 2008, 2009, we created the formula for marketing success, which is working brilliantly, which I still use today. And by that time, I'd moved my company, interestingly enough, from a PAYE, so everybody employed on employment contracts, yeah, to almost everybody was a freelancer. So as people retired or left, or as they did over 7 years, or just changed jobs or just gave up work or whatever, we replaced them with freelancers, not with. So I had a 6-floor building, central London, cost me £330,000 a year, with 35 freelancers in it, and 2 employees and myself. And we were running the system that I'd created, this system formula for marketing success with the freelancers. I'm out speaking, and I'm doing this gig with a behavioural economist, and I'm being billed as the behavioural marketer. And he says there's going to be a double dip recession, and I go, oh, I can't go through another recession. It'll be my third. So at that point, I decided to close the agency and move my system and my process to the cloud. And so today I sit here. I've just celebrated my 10th year effectively on my own. I have the same freelancer outsourced community. I run the system from my office here, and I'm doing it with obviously. I mean, we were running at about 60 to 80 clients as an agency. I'm now nearer 30 a year, and some of those are mentored clients. I've worked with maybe 5 or 6 big corporates a year to fundamentally change every element of their business so it becomes marketing led. And that takes about a year to do that, using the system and then outsourcing all the work to a big network of best-in-class providers of online stuff and design and things like that. So it's fundamentally changed the way I work. And so I'm one of those unusual businesses that survived longer than 5 years. As I said, celebrating my 10th year, and it's going amazingly well. And of course, all the money I make right now, I get to keep. I've got some overheads, but it's actually hard to spend money on overheads when you're doing what I'm doing. So probably bought too many books, maybe. That's
So we're jumping up to present day, and to be honest, you do a lot of different things at the moment. So you are the founder Freeman at the Guild of Entrepreneurs at the City of London.
Yes.
You're a full member of the Professional Speaking Association.
Yeah, I've just recently given that up, but yes, yeah, okay. Have been, yeah.
You're accredited speaker at CPD standard. You're
yes,
brand
right.
marketing practitioner. You're are you still head of marketing at Just Loans?
Yeah, so I've nominated that, although because of the pandemic, that business has gone dormant, so it's less of an issue right now.
But it's interesting. You have a great variety. I'm big for having not lots, but different areas to interest me and keep me motivated every day to do. I couldn't just do one thing day after day.
No.
So how do you sort of balance those 4 or 5 different things that you are involved in at the moment?
So I wish it was only 4 or 5 things. Because I also mentor. I'm obviously a speaker as well, so I speak 35 times a year. I at conferences and things like that. Obviously, ideally to live audiences, but it's all online based at the moment. I mentor 20 businesses right now. And I have 5 active clients. I also write books, so I write a lot. So how do I do that? So actually I do it in a really simple way. I keep a timesheet.
Okay.
Which I know sounds ridiculous. So
I've spent 15 years trying to get away from a timesheet, and
no, I absolutely love it.
Unfortunately, don't have to do it anymore. So I'm enjoying my timesheet free days. But
yeah, okay. So I use my timesheet strategically. It's very simple. So I have decided what I want to earn a year. I then have decided how many days I'm prepared to work to earn that. And then I divide that up into allocated time. And then what I do is I break that down even further by saying, okay, I'm prepared to spend, 20% of my time pro bono, so I won't earn anything from that. So that means I've only got 80%. And so what I'm doing is every week, my PA analyzes my time and gives me a dashboard report on how I spent my time in the last week. So therefore, if I know I've spent too long, particularly small businesses are very prone to when the sun shines, you make hay. The problem with that is they then ring me up and say, I haven't got any work anymore. And I go, well, what were you doing? You were really busy last month. And they said, yeah, well, I was working on all my client stuff and I didn't spend any time on getting new business. And now I need some new business. I said, it doesn't work like that. So there is a rule in business that you spend a third of your time delivering to paid for time. A third of your time will be the admin supporting that delivery, and a third of your time should be generating new business. And so I'm very clear that literally on a week-to-week basis, I'm always monitoring that third break. And then the net outcome is exactly, well, it's brilliant. If you set a number of how much you want to earn and you've only got 73 days to deliver it, because there's 23 working days in a year, you've got 70 days to deliver it. If you want to earn £70,000 a year and you've got 70 days, your day rate is 1,000, which means that your hourly rate is X. If you want to earn £250,000 a year, then it's 3 times that, etc., etc. So you're charging £3,000 a day. So it's very easy to work out a day rate and hourly rate. And then what you do is there's a thing called a GVA, which is called a gross value added. So I analyze each project, how many hours, how much money I get for that, and whether it's on target for that number or off target for that number. And actually it's got this science that sits behind it, which we teach our clients to do, so that you always know whether you're ebbing too far one way or ebbing too far the other way. And that's how I do it. So literally, after this call, I'll be handwriting it onto my timesheet, and then that will get analysed, and then I'll know whether this was a good use of time.
It's really interesting because I did something. So I've got here the different areas that I'm working in, and I've basically reverse engineered how much I need to earn in that year,
yes.
and then worked backwards from there.
Correct.
Well, how much do I have to earn for my coaching? How much do I charge? How many clients do I need, etc., etc., etc. And I think it's a brilliant, and this is one of the things that I coach with my coaches, with my clients, is that you've got to work out what you need to earn to cover your costs, cover your lifestyle, whatever your lifestyle is. You need to be able to cover it. So you need to make sure that you've got the earnings, and then work back from whether you charge people double the amount and work less, or
Absolutely.
charge lower and do more hours, depending on the type of work, etc. And I do that quite a lot I do that with all my clients, because I really think it's a great way of working out, instead of just having sort of fluffy, I want 5 clients and I'll charge anything between X and Y, and
or I've got a day rate which is 500.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully I'll get there at the end. And I get incredibly frustrated with people that do that, if I'm honest. But it's just an education. It's just a tool, a technique to be able to get you to where you need to be.
Yeah, and I think it's worked extraordinarily well for the last 10 years. And I was taught it as part of an organisation called Vistage, which I was a member of for 10 years, and I was taught how you develop a system process around your business, around what's called the limiting resource. And of course, every business has a limiting resource, and once you identify that, then you build the numbers, you build the system, you build the marketing. My brand bucket is numbers led, so therefore it's that shape because it has specific numbers associated with it, and you can apply everything from a numbers point of view, so that you run your business as a machine, which is what a business is. And my view on business is it's really a machine for developing commercialized relationships. So what you're looking to do is build numbers of relationships which have a commercial expectation associated with it, and ideally is designed with a profit built in. So so that's how I do it, and so therefore I'm always mindful that if I'm spending too long on something and I'm not making enough money from it, I'll stop and put in place an acceptable level rather than the perfectionist level. But and then that frees me up to spend more time coming up with more creative ideas, better briefing, chase, do research, read a book, write, express yourself, all that sort of thing. So, and then the pro bono work, I make sure I do 20% of my time as pro bono, which is where the company of entrepreneurs, we just got recently promoted by the Guildhall to a company of entrepreneurs. That's where I can then do lots of outreach work with young business people who maybe wouldn't get access to people like me because they could never afford it. And I do a lot of work with them now to help them, as do all the other freemen. So it's a cool organisation to be part of.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So I just want to give your company and your brand enough of a sort of publicity on the podcast. So it's called the Brand Bucket Company Limited, and you are a speaker and a marketing practitioner on that company. So I know you said that you literally lift and shifted, or was it Comms Unit into this new framework, which is the Brand Bucket Company. But just so talk a little bit about the company and sort of who are your clients and how do you keep the ideas fresh and interesting on marketing.
Okay, so currently I'm working with a innovative business that's in the laser dispersion spectroscopy space. They've developed a unique piece of technology that measures methane, carbon dioxide and ammonia in the air down to 4 parts per billion or something like that using lasers. So I'm working with them. I'm working with I've been working with Just Cash Flow, which is a peer-to-peer lender that lends money to small businesses, but of course has been slightly flummoxed by the fact that the government have been giving away a lot of free money to people, so they can't really lend very well to many people. I'm working with one of the UK's leading shop fit out companies. So they've done Harrods and Selfridges and Jamie Oliver and the Ivy and Quaglinos and things like that. So they do all the fit outs for that. I'm working with an apprenticeship organisation that specialises in developing apprentices for the STEM industries. So that's science, technology, engineering and mathematics industry. I'm working with I've just recently completed a project with a beauty clinic, one of the best beauty clinics outside Harley Street, based in Exeter. So I've got clients in Exeter and Oxford and London and Bedford. And so I go anywhere all over the country. So, and I have 4 or 5 things. I've got then I've got 20 mentees that are all business owners. So I work directly with business owners, spend a couple of hours a month with them, and they book me in and just say, right, I've got this challenge, how do we fix it? And then we do that, and we work that through. So again, doing anything from developing their website. So I built over 550 websites in my career. So I know a bit about the web world as well. So that's kind of cool. So I help with that. Just done some logo design work for one, which was approved. And then obviously I'm writing my second book. My first book's done really well. So I'm writing my second book on how marketing is fundamentally different right now to the way it was maybe only 10 years ago. And then speaking wise, I then drop in speaking gigs at conferences. So I've been and doing lots of podcasts and things like that. So just to keep the message going out there and educate people. And then the final thing is I'm raising money to build a school in Africa. So I'm in the process of raising £30,000 to build that's the other pro bono. So I have 2 pro bono projects, the school and the guild or the company of entrepreneurs. And what I do is I just, people contact me. We have a 1-hour chat to see where they're at, what they're looking to achieve. And then I have the Brand Bucket program, which is this program that we developed over effectively over a 10-year period, but it took 7 years really to nail down. And I apply that program in various degrees, depending on the size of the business, to those organizations. And it's very simple. It's just not necessarily easy. We develop a value proposition. We develop a target market profile called a psychographic profile. We develop a 1-page business plan. We develop effectively a journey for every buyer into your organization from beginning to end. We develop a marketing strategy and we develop a marketing action plan. And then what I do is I work then with the creative industry to develop all the creative work. So I write the briefs, I brief it in, I find the best agencies. So the way we keep the ideas fresh is having a pool of different creative people. What's often the problem is because if you go to one organization, you're left with whoever they employ at that given time. And that's what I did. Whereas now I can go, oh, that's interesting. The angle on that will really suit this agency, or it will really suit this designer, or it will really suit actually just going on $99logos.com and we'll whack out a logo from there, or go onto fiverr.com, or we'll develop video content over here, or we'll and then I've got a couple of joint ventures that I'm working on at the moment, doing a really interesting joint venture on replacing pay-per-click in Google with clicks through YouTube. So I've joint ventured with a digital agency and a video company, and I do all the briefing and the strategy and all the idea generation, and then it's executed by the video company and it's placed by the digital agency. So some really, really interesting things going on. Great fun. Every day is different. Even Mondays.
Monday's doing a podcast and the internet breaks.
And I'm a big subscriber to Do It Now and 1 Minute Manager. So again, every project is moving, it's live, it's doing things. So I can afford to just drop in and out of things very quickly, and that keeps you fresh. And I think being a custodian of your own timesheet means that you can just say, actually, do you know what? It's not raining, I'm going to go for a walk, or it's sunny and I'm going to mow the lawns, or or I'm in a town where I've not been before. I'm going to go and have a look round and visit the local art gallery or museum or something like that. I do a lot of that sort of thing as well as reading, and that, I think that just keeps the stimuli coming in all of the time, and you can reconfigure that and create great ideas for people.
Fantastic. All right, Barnaby, we're coming to the end of the interview. I asked everyone the same 6 questions. They're short fire sort of questions, but they don't need a short fire answer. It's up to you. First one is, what's the best decision that you made?
The best decision I've ever made is to get married to a woman who's very, very smart and very, very beautiful, and has given me 3 great children and supported me in my mad career throughout.
She's not behind you, is she?
She's not behind me. No, and in fact, if she ever sees this, she'll absolutely kill me for saying something like that.
What's the best piece of advice that you've been given?
Best piece of advice, I think to maintain personal development at all times. It's something that, because you don't get paid for it, you don't, but it absolutely adds value to your ability to help the people you work with by personal. So I'm very keen on personal development in that respect.
Awesome. Who helped you most in your career?
Who's helped me most? So there's I have 2 mentors that have been with me. I had my initial mentor, which I touched on earlier on in this podcast, who really guided me for the first 5 or 6 years of my career and set me on this course of becoming what's now known as a specialist generalist. That's an IBM word. And then I have another mentor who was my chair at my Vistage group, and he helped me navigate the shift from owning a central London top 200 advertising agency to pushing out on my own. And that has, it's meant I've seen my children, I've made more money than I've ever, and I'm in full control of what I'm doing, and I don't have lots of responsibilities that just eat away at you, and you can't be creative. So I think those 2 have been the most influential.
Awesome. Any regrets?
Absolutely none whatsoever. There's 2 reasons for that. Is I have, for some reason, no back memory. It doesn't mean I can't remember things. I just have no back memory. So very frustrating with my parents. I can't really remember anything particularly about my childhood. I can do generic things like talking about chipping camera, but actually specifics much more challenging. So I don't ever worry about what's gone behind. I'm always looking forward. So therefore, regret is just simply not part of my agenda. Doesn't mean I do bad things and just forget them. I just but no, just none.
You don't have to contact the police because
I don't. No, you don't. No.
You're not sure though, are you?
No, now I'm worried. Yes, now I'm worried. Maybe I need to. So I'm a bit like Einstein. I don't remember anything I can look up. He's famous for that. So no regrets.
Okay, what are you most proud of?
I think the at a personal level, obviously having a great family and my still being married after 30 years or plus, having 3 amazing daughters who are also ploughing their furrows. So at the personal level, that sort of thing. At a professional level, I think my work for Marie Curie Cancer Care, making the daffodil famous, I'm very proud of. And then more recently, I rebranded a charity called Children with Cancer UK, and that has completely shifted the trajectory of their charity as well. So very proud of those things, but also just generally being able to walk down the high street and look at logos and businesses that are there as a direct result of me being able to translate the value in that business into things that other people would buy through brand and marketing. That makes me feel great. It's one of the big benefits of the job I do.
What does legacy mean to you?
I think I'm quite pragmatic about that. I think enabling young people to run great businesses is an absolute key desire of mine now. One of the challenges of being a baby boomer was you had to learn yourself, and I became very, very frustrated by making the same mistakes as the people I work for. And they could just say, well, I wouldn't have done it like that. And I go, well, what do you mean you wouldn't have done it like that? Did you know I was going to do it? We knew you were going to do it, but you have to learn the hard way. No.
Yeah.
No. I want the young people to make mistakes I've never made and could never make. I don't want them making the mistakes I've made. So it's why I really thrive on the mentoring side. It characterizes my style of working with clients anyway. But so my legacy is to enable confidence amongst the younger generation of business owners, the early stage business, to really have confidence in asking the questions of people who've been there and done it before, but actually to make new mistakes. I think that would be very cool, and ultimately create a better world by hot pursuit of social enterprise. So I think now I've got to where I'm happy being. I can give back a lot, and I think we should be creating businesses that are designed that way rather than are profiteering from the outset. So I'm very keen on that. So I guess from a legacy point of view would be, obviously the school in Africa, that's going to be fantastic, great family, but actually enable a little small army of business owners to be much better placed to have great lives themselves.
Awesome. And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
So I live in the world, so you just have to look me up on the internet. As long as you type in Barnaby Wynter with a Y, WYNTER, there's a story attached to that. And LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me. And then I have my own website, www.barnabywynter.com. You can have a look around. I've got videos on there, what I'm doing, what I'm up to, and you can contact me through. But the best way is through the internet or on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the preferred route. Most people do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Barnaby. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really fascinating speaking to you.
Mark, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yes.